Okay, so I think we'll get started. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Richard Clothier, Marketing Manager at Phoenix Datacom. Today we're here with our partners from FireEye to address the types of cyber threats created or exacerbated by home working. And we're excited to have FireEye CTO David Grout as our speaker today. David is regularly seen and heard speaking to the media about the cyber threat landscape and how a clever blend of advanced technology and specialist intel can combine to create a robust security posture. Just to quickly run through our agenda today, we're going to cover what the cyber threat landscape looks like for remote workers. We'll look at how attackers exploit home working vulnerabilities, and we'll talk a bit about how technology can address most of these new major challenges. David will also cover the wider cybersecurity protection spectrum, from access control to zero trust and everything in between. And please do send me your questions via the private chat facility on here or by email. We'll then bring these out at the end. But first, it would be remiss of me to not mention that as well as cybersecurity solutions, we can also provide the network visibility and resilience required to enable them. We can also help you with your network performance and test and automation challenges. And this is all backed up with options for 24/7 support and local response for technical assistance and resolution. And we can demonstrate everything we do online or in our multi-million-pound cyber lab. So to provide a bit of context for today, our security webinar series has covered some very topical challenges so far, and at times has touched on some of the areas around diagnosing end-user experience issues and cyber threats exacerbated by home working. A recurring theme in Q&A sessions so far has been an interest around how IT and security teams have had to quickly facilitate a mass migration to home working and some of the challenges experienced along the way. For example, a switch to mass home working is having an effect on enterprise firewalls due to the sheer amount of activity they're having to process. And this is further exacerbated when upgrading to new business applications, especially if the customer wishes to inspect the encrypted app traffic for malware. So we thought it was high time for a webinar dedicated to the specifics of security in the home working era. And I won't bore you with phrases like the new norm, but suffice to say, we are seeing customers having to quickly adapt to mass home working and address the cyber threats taking advantage of a widening attack surface. Now, as an integrator of cybersecurity solutions and the network visibility required to enable them, we at Phoenix Datacom took a long, hard look at the types of threats and tactics used when people are working from home. We then looked at the vendors we partner with and quickly saw that in FireEye, we have a partner with the tools available to address these threats as well as many others. And as a FireEye Gold partner, supplying and integrating FireEye security solutions for many household names, we are able to call upon FireEye's thought leaders to participate in our hot topic events. So I'm delighted that today we're joined by David Grout, CTO for the EMEA region at FireEye. And as we promised you when you registered to this webinar, David is going to cover the reality and scope of the cyber threat landscape for remote workers, identifying and understanding how attackers exploit home working vulnerabilities, the technology quick wins to address most of these major new challenges, and he'll also cover the wider security protection spectrum, from access control to zero trust. As I mentioned earlier, we're also running a Q&A session at the end of David's presentation. Whilst I am recording the webinar for use in future, I will stop recording when we get to the Q&A. So please feel free to ask any questions you like during the Q&A. And please remember there is no such a thing as a bad or silly question. If you do have some questions but you would rather not ask them out loud, that's fine. Please just email them to me or send them to me via the private chat facility on here. And so without any further ado, I'll now hand over to David at FireEye.
Thank you, Richard. Hope you can hear me correctly.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for everyone to be there this morning. A real pleasure for me to run this webinar around the threat landscape for the home workers. I will try to go through all the agenda that Richard described. I just switch on the camera a few seconds because I think that when we are working remotely, it's always better to get, I will say, the face of the people to try to generate some emotional links in between the audience. I hope that you will enjoy the content of today. As mentioned by Richard, do not hesitate to ask any question you want. Be open. We are there to share. We like to share our knowledge, our experience. Just make it free. I will switch to my presentation, and I will switch off the camera to save a little bit of bandwidth, like a lot of people right now. Let me switch to my screen. And Richard, if you can just confirm that you can see the PowerPoint presentation.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, it's perfect. Richard already introduced myself really quickly. I will try just to recap on this. My name is David, David Grout. For the people who know, I would say the movie, you can recognize the I am Grout persona. It's kind of a good tips to remind my name. I'm working currently as the CTO for EMEA at FireEye. I joined the company roughly 5 years ago. And I'm running, I would say, several tracks or several activities on my daily basis. First of all, I'm in charge of all the technical stuff for Southern Europe, meaning that all the countries in between Belgium, France, Italy, Spain, Israel, and Turkey. You maybe recognize my accent, and I want to apologize for that. I'm located in France, and I'm working remotely from France. I'm also working on some, I would say, specific topics, such as the governmental relationship or specific think tanks, in order to work on specific topics, including OT security, IT security, incident responses, tabletop exercise for executives, and some others. I'm also, I would say, involved on incident responses, meaning that I'm in the field with the victims, trying to understand what happened. And during the course of the presentation today, I will probably illustrate some of my comments with the real life example that I lived in the field. And last but not least, I'm also in charge of the relationship in between our customers and the product management and the product strategy in the US, in order to understand how we need to develop our own product, how do we need to fit in with the regulation in each countries, how do we need to develop technologies in order to stick with the regulation and all this kind of stuff. If you want to follow me, or if you want to ask me any question, you can see here my name and my email address. I'm also reachable on the LinkedIn website. Just feel free to reach out to me and to ask me any question you want. As I mentioned before, I joined the company probably 5 years ago right now. It was like December 2015, close to 5 years. And when I joined the company, the threat landscape and the activities were totally different. We were mainly focusing on APTs and financial cyber criminal groups. And from there and until now, we are really extending our capabilities all over the spectrum regarding on ransomware, specific attacks, geopolitics. At this stage and as of today, we are working a lot on the election and all the influence campaign around the election and all those kind of stuff. I haven't prepared any slide about FireEye, just because I want to really dig into threat to the point regarding the subject of today. But just keep in mind, we are probably the largest cybersecurity company in the world. We are operating all over the world right now. And we have people located in all the countries, including England, France, Spain, Italy, and some others. And just do not hesitate. In consideration of the topic today, we discussed with Richard when we prepared the presentation, and the idea was really to give you an idea around the threat landscape. What are we talking about? Which kind of information are we able to share with you regarding this, I would say, new norms? As Richard mentioned, it's always difficult to try to use these specific terms, but the idea is that we saw a lot of changes into the organization and into the landscape in general, and we tried to translate those changes with numbers and facts. I'm coming from a mathematical curriculum. I like numbers. I like to really, I would say, get the fact in order to demonstrate what I'm talking about. And this is what we will do during the first part of the presentation. In order to back up my information and to back up the numbers that I will share with you, I relied on two main documentation that you can find in internet. They are fully available and free of access. The first document that I will use is named the M-Trend report, the 2020 M-Trend report. The idea of this report is really to collect information regarding the investigation that we are doing. As you probably know, or maybe not, and I will illustrate there, we are working on three main categories when we are looking on the cybersecurity market. We are providing product and technologies to protect, detect, and to manage forensics. And I will not dig into too much details there until the end of my presentation. We have one of our organization, well known as Mandiant, who is really digging to and managing incident responses all over the world. And last but not least, we are also running a CTI, cyber threat intel operations, where we are collecting information regarding the attackers, the adversaries. The global idea of the M-Trend report is to collect year after year all those information, and mainly the information who are coming from the field investigation, in order to compare the trends and to compare some specific metrics. And I will dig into the metrics during the first part of my presentation. The second report that I used to build up the presentation today is a report who is mainly dedicated to the security effectiveness of our customers and prospects. We ran a survey around roughly 100 companies who are covering 11 different verticals in the market, including automotive, retail, oil and gas, energy, you name it. And we try to understand which type of products are deployed, how they are deployed, and what are the effects on the security effectiveness for the security stack. And it's quite interesting to dig into those kind of details, because a lot of companies has a false sense of security. They think that they are well secured just because they bought the right product. But most of the time, and I will dig into some numbers there, we discovered that those products are not well configured, they are not well used, or even sometimes they are not, I would say, positioned on the right part of the network and all those kind of stuff. And I will dig into some numbers there to show you what is the global threat landscape within the world of the IT security. First of all, I will start with some key investigation statistics. As I mentioned, we are collecting anonymized information when we are running incident responses. Just to give you an idea, during the last 12 months, we ran over 800 incident responses. And when I mention 800, I'm only talking about the massive ones, meaning investigation where we spent hours with our customers to try to understand what happened, how it happened, what were the motivations of the attackers, and all those kind of stuff. Based on those investigations, we were looking on some specific numbers to try to understand what are the attacker behaviors, what are they trying to do, how can we try to catch them, and all those kind of information. I decided to highlight today some of the key numbers that we found during this report publication. And I think those numbers are quite interesting for you also to try to understand how you can try to build a security policy based on the real risks. You need to define and to understand what is the threat landscape, and more precisely, what is your threat landscape, in order to define and to develop the right policy and the right strategy to protect yourself and your company. When you are looking on those numbers, some numbers are quite interesting, as I said. On 1/3 of the cases, 31% to be precise, when an attacker tries to penetrate a network, he retries again within less than 12 months after the first attack. Meaning that if someone is trying to target you, they are clearly interested from something. They want to get access to it, and they will probably retry. What does it mean in terms of global strategy? It means that you need to have the right strategy to detect them if they are trying to come again. And you need to be able also to kick them out correctly on the remediation process. The second type of information who are quite interesting when we are looking at those numbers, and we saw a big increase since the beginning of the year, is the fact that some groups are really there to try to resell access or to prepare themselves for a future attack. We can probably collapse the three last numbers, the 7%, the 4%, and the 3%, and we will be close to 14 and maybe more since the beginning of the year. We are seeing more and more groups who are looking to get the foothold on the organization, and they are trying to resell the foothold to another group. They are trying to sell the access to a second group who will be the group who will focus on the attack itself. And I will dig into some details there when I will cover the ransomware techniques, tools, and procedures, and how the ransomware groups are operating as of today. Last but not least, the two last numbers who are quite interesting is all around the motivation. We are still seeing a lot of cyber espionage, and specifically coming from specific countries such as China, Iran, or Russia, who are looking in European countries to take an advantage on the, I will say, enterprise side. They want to take an advantage to try to understand and to try to get access to your intellectual properties, to try to get access to your contract, to your customers, and all those kind of stuff. Last but not least, in terms of numbers, and I think this is probably the one who is raising the fastest since the last weeks and months, and specifically with the ransomware, as I mentioned before, is all the financially motivated attackers who are really looking to get money. They are looking to get money in two main areas. The first one is through the extortion itself for the ransom, looking on the encryption keys and all those kind of stuff. And some of the time, they are also trying to resell the information that they are exfiltrating on your network. Those numbers are quite interesting to try to understand what are the big trends in our market. The second type of numbers that I decided to show you today, because I think we need to, first of all, take a look on the attacker's view, but we need also to understand how the people are trying to protect themselves. What are they doing and where they can try to be better and to improve their security effectiveness. As I said at the beginning of my presentation, we did a global survey to try to understand what is the security validation level inside the companies. And we discovered some interesting and amazing numbers looking on the security effectiveness and the security controls. As an example here, I took some numbers just to show you, I would say the highlights, but I really encourage you to take a look on the full documentation and the full report in order to try to understand what we found and to try to maybe duplicate this effort inside your company by using a security validation platform to assess yourself and to measure your effectiveness. When we are looking at the numbers, we discovered, I will not say discovered because it's maybe not a discovery, but we confirmed that most of the company bought a lot of different products. You can see here on the right side of the slide some specific acronyms, and I'm pretty sure that you might find that you have all of them or most of them in your network. And the idea here is really to illustrate the fact that people are buying a lot of technologies, but they are not really trying to get a global view on how they deploy them and how they are interconnecting in between them. And we found that during this survey that for most of the companies are using more than 50 plus security controls, in their organization. However, we found also that in 80% of the cases, the products are not configured as the state of the art seen by the editors. And you might have a lot of very good reason to not do it. It might be the fact that you cannot upgrade the platform, you cannot change specific settings for policy reason, all those kind of stuff. But the reality is that it's misleading you on the security perception that you may have. Because when you will ask the editors or the providers, are you securing myself against these specific threats? Probably the guys will answer you, yes, we are. Our product is able to catch up these specific threats. However, in 80% of the cases, this product will not be configured correctly in your own network. This is where you will need to really validate your platform, measure your security effectiveness to try to understand if you haven't missed something in the configuration. We saw also, and this is quite interesting for the COVID period, we saw also that in 35% of the cases, the security control are overlapping the features, meaning that probably we can find some good area to reduce the cost and to improve the rationalization in security by looking on which type of features are overlapping and how we can reduce the number of products that we deployed on the networks. It's quite interesting when we are talking about the work from home, policy, because with the work from home policy, and we will see this later on in the presentation, a lot of people deployed product, solution to cover themselves. And most of the time, they duplicate the effort on some product, on some technologies or features that they already had in their environment, but they just forgot about it. And I think this is also one of the topics who might be addressed when you are looking on the validation platform market. Last but not least, in terms of security, it's quite interesting to see that. We discovered that in 67% of the cases, when we are running a scenario with specific attacks, like using a Mimikatz payload or something like that, in most of the cases is not prevented, meaning that the product are not doing the job that they are normally there to do. And I think this is probably the most concerning numbers when we are looking on those numbers. If I'm moving forward on the global trends that we are observing, and specifically since the COVID period and the work from home change in the organization, we saw several things. First of all, and I decided to really, I would say, put it as a specific topic, we saw an amazing increase on the ransomware attacks. And I will dig into some details there during my presentation, because I think ransomware are clearly one of the topics that you need to tackle. Most of the board of executives are asking their IT directors and IT practitioners to validate and confirm that they are well secured against the ransomware. And we saw some big changes in their way to work. We are seeing more and more long-term network penetration when we are looking on the ransomware operators. They are not just trying to use a phishing and encrypt the network. They are really penetrating the network, moving laterally, trying to get access to the right information, exfiltrate the information, and after that, trying to play on two, I will say, battlefield. One will be the extortion regarding the ransom itself and the encryption keys. And the second one will be all around the exfiltration of data and the money that they will ask you to not leak the information in some specific website. If you never heard about the shaming websites, who are well used by Maze, Double Payment, Fin6, Fin11, where we just published a report this week on our Mandiant Advantage platform. If you haven't had the time and the chance to take a look on it, we just made an announcement on the Mandiant Advantage platform. Just go to the FireEye.com website, and you will get access. And you can get access to the FIN11 report, where we are talking about those kind of behavior and approach. When we are looking on the work from home and the COVID-19 period, and I had a discussion yesterday with one of my customers, and he confirmed me that he saw a big increase in terms of phishing attacks, because social engineering and targeting the employees might be a little bit easier with this kind of work from home, where people are keen to click, keen to get information, and all those kind of information. The VPN and the authentication target are clearly one of the biggest trends that we are seeing coming from the attackers. The attackers are looking on the exposed assets, and most of the exposed assets are VPN and authentication platform or authentication gateways. And the attackers are using either brute force attacks, password spraying, or vulnerabilities usage in order to get access to those gateways and to pivot from there into the internal network. And we are also seeing a lot of misinformation and fake news and all those kind of stuff. Let's move forward to the challenges and the risks associated to the work from home, I will say, policy and change into the organization. And maybe one of the biggest, and I will pause there like a second, is the speed of migration. I will let you read the question there, but I think most of the companies, and specifically in Europe, and maybe it's even more true in some specific countries like France, Spain, or maybe more the Latin countries, where companies were not, I will say, we're not focused on the remote working capabilities. They had VPNs, they had some web servers who were exposed with Citrix Netscaler, or even some virtual machine were accessible from the external world. Most of the time, they were leading the digital transformation at their pace of time. However, and I love this, I will say, joke, with the COVID-19, it changed everything. From day one to day two, organizations were obliged to think about how to give access to all my employees to all the resources, not only the email, or not only the O365 or the G Suite application, but even to all the business application. And it changed everything because most of the companies were not ready. They were in the rush in order to make those changes. And when you are in the rush, you cannot really, I would say, think about the heat map regarding the risks and put in place the right mitigation techniques and tactics to limit the vulnerability window. And I think it's one of the big change that we saw in this world. When we are looking on the remote access architectural approaches that we saw in the markets, we can try to separate them in three main categories. I know it might be a little bit more. We might discuss about it during hours. Unfortunately, today we have only like a specific time to use, and I decided to focus on some specific ones. What we saw, and it's probably more for the smaller companies and the companies with, I will say, a less mature approach on the IT and the IT security, we saw the direct access through RDP. It might be strange when you are hearing that, but if you take a look on Shodan website as an example, and you take a look on the RDP connection were available in March and April, you can see a big increase in the world on the RDP connection exposed into the internet. And I will come back to the challenges there, but most of the companies, and probably the smaller companies, but not only the smaller, decided to give access to their employees to some specific assets by using RDP exposed into the internet. Unfortunately, it's opened up some, I would say, big challenges. RDP, most of the time, people are not using the two-factor authentication on the RDP. RDP is also most of the time using like a really old-fashioned operating systems or features on the operating systems, and you can find a lot of vulnerabilities available into internet. And this is from where you might find also a lot of groups who are selling access to RDP platform. The second and probably the most largest, I will say, deployment that we are seeing into the organization is the usage of the VPN and virtualized desktop into the organization. The VPN and virtualized desktop are probably the most used. People are giving access to their employees by using VPNs, and sometimes they are also using VMware or Citrix Netscaler to get access to the DMZ and to pivot to the specific application. Again, when we are looking at the biggest challenges there, most of the time we are looking on the vulnerabilities themselves. I'm pretty sure that you heard about the Netscaler vulnerabilities. This one has been used heavily by the attackers in the beginning of the year, in February and March timeframe. If you never heard about it, I encourage you to take a look on our blog on the FireEye.com website. We wrote a blog with Citrix, and we also provided some free tools in order to assess yourself and to look forward on IOCs for Netscaler vulnerability usage. The two-factor authentication, and I will probably come back to that a lot of time during my presentation today, it's kind of a mandatory step. You need to think about it. If you have anything in your company who is exposed to the world without a multi-factor authentication methods, please change it today. Make it this week. It's kind of your main priorities for the week. It will not protect you against everything and anything, but it will increase for sure your protection your protection level. Last but not least, the zero trust is probably one of the most fashion topic and buzzword in those days. However, having an approach based on the identity and the two-factor authentication and the identity providers is not so easy. For the people and the companies who were not ready to do that, it was, and it's not an easy journey to move from a standard usage to the zero trust model. And you need to think about the challenges here, like the certificates protection, the unmanaged devices, and all those kind of stuff. The shadow IT, and I will talk about it a little bit later on. I already mentioned it a little bit, but I will dig into some details there, and I will not spend too much because I'm conscious about the time that we have today. But when we are looking on the work from home architecture challenges, either you are using VPN or RDP or Zero Trust, you might find always the same type of challenges. I spoke about the authentication with the two-factor authentication. I didn't speak yet, but I know that, and Richard did it during the introduction, the capacity was probably one of the biggest challenge for the companies. The architecture were not ready to go and to manage those kind of work from home policy. And it might be for enterprise themselves. When we are talking about firewall, VPN, I saw a lot of projects for upgrade on VPN and firewall capabilities, IPS, sandbox, and all those kind of stuff. But it's also true when we are looking on people in their house. I don't know for you guys and girls who are on the call today, but for myself, I was at home, and I'm still at home, but I was at home during close to 5 months with my 2 children there. And they were working from home too. They were using the internet connection. They were connected to their PlayStation network and all those kind of stuff. They are 12 and 14. And at the end of the day, they consume a lot of my bandwidth. And I was challenged during 5 months to try to find the right balance in between giving them the access to their, I would say, needs. It might be education needs or non-education needs like the PlayStation games and all those kind of stuff, and giving me the right access to my own needs in order to being able to manage those kind of webinars without being obliged to switch from my Wi-Fi connection to the 4G connection. And I think sometimes it is something that companies are just forgetting. Even for the people themselves at home, it's quite challenging. It's quite challenging also to protect your information, to protect your laptop, your desktop, and all this kind of stuff. Most of the people used also their own application and their own laptops and desktops to work with their family, not only for their standard work. And it has been inserted a lot of challenges for companies in terms of security policy, security practices, and all those kind of stuff. When we are looking globally to resume on the users' challenges for the work from home policies, shadow IT is one of them. When the people didn't get access to the tools that they need, they will find a solution. It's the human behavior. If you are not providing them the right location to share big files, as an example, they will probably try to take a look on internet to try to find an application who will give them this access. And you need, as the IT practitioner or IT director, you need to ensure that you are providing them the right tools. It's true for the download, for the upload. It's true for all the cloud application. And two last things that people are sometimes missing is all the social engineering. People are heavily, I will say, challenged by attackers through phishing. Even phone calling are coming back, where I thought that it was probably finished from years. And last but not least, the physical security. When you are at the office, you are protecting your devices, you are locking down your computers. Sometimes people are not doing it when they are working from home. And I think they need to continue to adopt the right behavior. Some best practices, and I already spoke about it, and conscious about the time, I will not spend too much time there. But if you need to keep something in mind when I will finish the presentation, it's probably this sentence. Do not focus only on the payload. And I will try to explain. All the IT security market as of today is promising machine learning, artificial intelligence. And everyone is talking about detecting the last ransomware payload and blocking it on your network. Keep in mind that an operation for an attackers or an operators in the ransomware world is kind of a 5 to 7 steps operation. From the pre-operation to the infiltration, propagation, till the objectives, where the objectives might be data exfiltration and or ransomware payload. If you want to protect yourself correctly, you need to build up your security policy on all those steps. You need to ask yourself the question, am I ready to detect, to protect, to remediate, to investigate on each steps on the attack lifecycle? Am I able to block someone who is trying to exfiltrate information? Am I able to detect someone who is trying to move laterally from a desktop to a server? Am I ready to detect someone who is trying to get in touch with my Active Directory domain in order to get access to my login and logon and all those kinds of information? Keep in mind, do not focus only on the payload. Build up your security policy on the full entire scenario. How to improve yourself is probably the mirror of the discussion I just had with you. First of all, you need to improve your protection level. You need to deploy multiple detection and protection engines to reduce the risks. It might be through the endpoint, through the network, email. It might be on the detection on demand for the cloud services and all those kind of stuff. If you are enough mature and if you have enough people, if not, you can rely on several providers. You need to build up proactive hunting, being able to look and hunt for malicious behaviors. You need also to be able to react. And why I said that, because as I said before, a lot of people are promising you that you will never be in breach. It's not true. You will be. But the difference is between a good and a bad breach. I don't know if I can use this term. It will be your ability to react. If you are ready to reduce the dwell time, if you are ready to react fast, you will be the best. If you are not ready, if you haven't put in place the right processes, the right tools, if you have not trained yourself with the right exercise, it will be difficult for you to protect your perimeter. I put it here again, the two-factor authentication, because I'm a strong believer that it might help you to really increase your security level and the user awareness and the measure. You need to measure yourself. You need to understand where you need to improve, where you are good, how you are good, and how you are not. And the measure and the security validation is quite important there. At the end of my presentation, for the last and the next like 5 minutes or so, I will speak about the FireEye endpoint security detection capabilities, because when we discussed about the topic with Richard, I said him that a lot of our customers in Europe decided to deploy an EDR technology, and they rely on our FireEye endpoint security detection. The product itself, and I will not spend too much time on the product and the details of the product, but the global idea is really to increase and provide protection, detection, reaction, and forensic capabilities. The global idea is really to being able to protect better, to detect better, to help you to understand and manage the malware triage, to take the right decision, and to move forward to the remediation. For the companies who are not ready to do it directly, we are also working through MSSP providers, and we are providing our own 24/7 management with our managed defense teams. Looking on the product itself, as I mentioned, since the beginning of the year and the work from home change in the world, we saw a big increase in the deployment. Just to give you an idea, right now we have roughly 20 million agents deployed worldwide, where we have like 15 million agents who are managed by our customer directly, 2.5 million agents who are managed by our managed defense team, and probably 2.5 million who are managed by our incident responder, since we are using the same product for the incident responses. When we are looking on the type of customers, it's all around, I would say, all type of verticals. Might be automotive, pharmaceutical, oil and gas, airlines, private and public sectors. All type of companies are using this type of technologies. I will switch to a really quick demo, because I think we are close to the time that we manage ourselves. But just to give you an idea about what is looking and what is the UI of the product. Richard, if you can confirm just that you can see my screen here on the web browser.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will not spend too much time there on the demo, but just to give you a little bit of flavor on the product.
David, could you just zoom it in a little bit, please? It's just a little small on my screen.
Is it better?
That's a little too far. Just out a little bit. Yeah, okay, that's better.
Yeah. Yeah, I will not spend too much time there, but the global idea of the product is really to being able, as I said, to detect earlier in the processes. And the idea is that the anti-malware engine or the anti-exploitation engine will be able to block the payload themselves. However, the product will guide you and will help you for investigation to understand in the early phases if an attacker is trying to move on your network. And the global idea, as an example here on the UI, is that the product will give you the right information at the right time to help you to triage the alert, to investigate, and to remediate if needed. As an example here, and I will move directly to the pumps, I got an alert from one of the computers there, and I want to try to understand what happened. This computer didn't get yet any payload coming from the ransomware itself, if I'm talking about the ransomware, but it got enough information on the early phases of the attacks. And in this case, we saw, as an example here, that the attackers tried to use some specific CMD and PowerShell commands to try to move laterally to build up a channel in between the victim and the command and control. And the product will give me all the information in order to understand, first of all, if it's a false negative or false positive, or if it's a real alert. And second, all the right information for a security practitioner in order to hunt and to understand if this attacker is already somewhere else in my organization. Are they trying already to get access to several computers? Are they trying to get access to several credentials? Are they opening up several connections in between themselves and my computers on my network, or even for the remote workers on their computers? The global idea is that I can dig into the details on all the information, and I can grab the IOCs to try to understand, as an example here, that the attackers try to build up a remote connection on a specific IP. He tried to build up and to get access to a specific resources on some specific websites, meaning that I can reuse those information to spread those details to my security team and to try to investigate on my proxy log, on my firewall log, if those guys are trying to do it only on one single computers, or if they are already doing it in several ones. And this is quite interesting when I'm talking about reducing the dwell time. The global idea is that based on one specific investigation, based on one specific alert, I want to be able to collect all the right information, all the indicator of compromise, in order to get the full view and the full spectrum of the attacks. And I think it's also something that you need to get and to take away from the presentation today. When you are getting an information, ensure that you are verifying that the specific indicator is not present anywhere else inside or outside of your organization. Do not focus only on the single computer who generate the alerts, but really grab all the information to pivot and to take a look if another one might be impacted by the same attackers. As an example here, I got the correct information regarding the IP who is being used by the attackers. I can pivot there on the same product to build up a search and to ask on all my computers in my entire estate. It might be 1,000 computers, it might be 100,000 computers, it might be only 50 computers. I might ask them and hunt, give me all the computers who has been connected to specific IP within the last 10 days. And from there, I can continue to pivot, to understand, and again, to get the global picture and to get the global information and not only the single attack or the single alert. I will come back there to the final words on us. I think we are like really well positioned to work with you and work with you through Phoenix as of today when we are looking on the combination. We are in the field. We grab the right threat intel. We are able to understand from the strategic to the technical details the way that you are protecting your network. We can work with you to improve your detection, your protection, even your measurement on your security. And we are there to really share with you all the knowledge that we can collect. And with this combination, we are able to understand what is your level of resilience and where you need to improve your plan and what will be next for you. With those information, I hope that the presentation was quite interesting for you, and you grab and you collect all the information we were looking for. We will open up for question and answers, and I want again to thank you for your time today.
Okay, thank you very much, David.